nuclear weapon goes off, it usually explodes way above the surface. So the one in Hiroshima blew up about 600 meters above the ground. And so that's called an air burst. And that's used because it's uh, more deadly than having a weapon that hits the ground and blows up. And so anyway, we estimated that if Pakistan and India had a nuclear conflict and they used about half the weapons that we thought they'd have, which we thought by now they'd have about 500, but they seem to only have like 350. But at any rate, in the simulations we did, we assumed they had 250 nuclear weapons. And we estimated that somewhere between 50 and 125 million people in India and Pakistan would die. More would die in India because it is a much more heavily populated country than Pakistan. But as a percentage of the population, more would die in Pakistan. The worst that could happen, we think, is 125 million people would die there. That's not the worst that would happen to the rest of the world. Because when you blow up these nuclear weapons, it's like bringing a piece of the sun down to the earth. So anyway, the weapon explodes as a bright flash of light, and it could badly burn you if you were exposed to it. And that bright flash of light will catch things on fire, like leaves and papers and cloth and things that are easily ignitable that are lying around. And then that's followed by a shock wave, which can knock down buildings and pulverize them. And that will probably create new fires because there would be people with fires in their houses that are suddenly spread out, and there would be natural gas lines probably, depending on how they were fueling their things, and electrical shocks from down power lines. And those things would all start other fires. This is what happened in Hiroshima. The nuclear explosion was only about 1% as powerful as the energy released in the fires after the bomb went off. So there was 100 or more times the energy in the fires than in the bomb. So those fires, if it were not a very windy day, those fires would become a firestorm. There were several of these in Europe in the Second World War, like in Hamburg and Dresden. And the United States burned 60-something cities in Japan in the Second World War. There was an intense flame, and it's so hot that the air starts rising, and that pulls in air from the surrounding area, which kind of fans the fires and makes them burn even more. But the worst part of this is that these firestorms will carry the smoke from the fires upward into the upper atmosphere. And so we simulated this in our simulations. We assumed that the smoke would be carried by these firestorms up into the region around 10 to 20 kilometers in altitude. And then the sunlight shines on that dark smoke. It's full of black carbon, and that makes it rise even further. And in the models, it rises up to 80 kilometers above the surface. And that matters because it doesn't never rain at high altitude. The stratosphere starts at 10 to 15 kilometers. Commercial airliners fly in the lower stratosphere, usually at mid latitudes. And once you're there, it doesn't ever rain. And so the smoke just stays there and drifts around the world. It very quickly will move around the world and cover the whole northern hemisphere probably within a week or two, probably move to cover lots of the southern hemisphere within a month. And the black smoke absorbs sunlight, and that does two bad things. The first thing it does is it heats the stratosphere, which acts to destroy the ozone layer. So the ozone layer protects us from the harmful ultraviolet light from the sun. And so if you go out and there was no ozone, you couldn't stay outside. You'd be burned so badly from the sunlight. The worst thing that happens is that the sunlight no longer reaches the ground. And so it gets cold at the ground. So we see this every day. The lights go out at night and it gets cold. And every winter, the Earth tilts away from the sun a little bit, and it gets cold in the winter hemisphere. So this is not any mysterious climate thing. It happens every day and every year. Climate models know how to calculate how fast the temperature drops. And in this case, the smoke stays there for years, and the temperatures start dropping, and they'll continue dropping for about 3 years. And then it takes another 3 years or more for the temperature to return to normal. And the temperatures, even for a war between India and Pakistan, can reach ice age levels. It's not going to cause an ice age. Ice ages lasted for thousands or tens of thousands of years, but it'll be ice age kinds of temperatures over the whole Earth. And that makes it pretty much impossible to grow crops. And so for a war between Pakistan and India, in which they use 100 kiloton weapons, and maybe 250 of them, something like that, against each other. It doesn't get to a nuclear winter, in which it stays cold for 3 years, but the temperatures do drop significantly at high latitudes, especially. And it's already hard to grow things in places like Russia because the summer is short. You don't have a long growing season. And so because of that, you end up with places in Russia, for example, and in Canada, where we think a war between India and Pakistan would probably kill more than 75% of the people that are there. In the United States, it would probably kill more than 25% of the people. In China, it would probably kill more than 50% of the people. Of course, there are places in the southern hemisphere where it doesn't get as cold because there's much more ocean in the southern hemisphere, which is very slow to cool. And some places like the lower part of South America is very close to the ocean, and Australia and New Zealand are surrounded by ocean. So it doesn't get as cold there, and they don't have high populations there. So they probably still have enough food to feed a lot of their populations, and probably not many people will starve to death there. They both have nuclear capable aircraft. They both have cruise missiles. They both have normal ballistic missiles. So these are two highly armed countries with huge armies, with substantial ways of delivering nuclear weapons, with lots of nuclear weapons. So it's a very great danger, not just to them. India and Pakistan, we think, could lose 50 to 125 million people, depending on how many weapons are used and what their yields are. And the rest of the world, though, could lose 1 to 3 billion people from a war between India and Pakistan. The rest of the world could lose 1 to 3 billion people from starvation because of the terrible weather, the cold temperatures that would occur from all the fires, putting smoke in the stratosphere and blocking sunlight. So it's, scientists are used to being ignored. And, we don't communicate well with people, and we have few opportunities to tell people directly what might happen to them. So that's really your job. That's what the press does. That's what people who make documentaries and things like that do, is they can communicate to people